Welcome to Follow the International News. Very happy to accompany you in the upcoming minutes. Let's take a look at the outstanding news in the world today. Polish president offered a life buoy for Kyiv in the difficult situation. Europe may be a new Ukrainian cooperation choice when having sex with the US becomes tense. Deadly gun battle near Damascus tense every hour. Israel issued a hot directive. The guns of the new government in Syria and the Druze community on March 1st killed 1 person and 9 injured people. Europe is like a hot cow ants after the battlefield at the White House? European officials describe the situation after 10 minutes of war between US President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymir Zelenskyy, disaster. Russia blowed the battle on Trump-Zelensky, an expert guessing the upcoming damage to Kiev. According to Fox, USA, these heavy losses have occurred with Kiev in the context of the negotiation between President Trump and his peers Zelenskyy, broken publicly. Polish president offered a life buoy for Kyiv in the difficult situation. Europe can be a new Ukrainian cooperation choice when having sex with the US becomes tense. Polish President Andrzej Duda issued a daring statement when proposing Europe to sign an agreement to exploit resources with Ukraine, which can compete seriously with the US idea. Contrary to the position of Washington, the Polish leader emphasized that European agreement not only includes economic benefits but also must include reliable security for Kyiv. According to Duda, such an approach can help Ukraine more confident in the future and at the same time consolidate Europe's position in the international arena. The Polish president emphasized that Europe has political resources and will to provide Kyiv more than approaching minerals. This statement was made in the context of increasing crisis in the relationship between Kyiv and the Donald Trump administration, who increasingly showed the attitude of willingness to reduce support for Ukraine for the interests of the US. Mr. Duda emphasized, an agreement on fossil fuel between Europe and Ukraine can be better than the US's choice if we add real security guarantee, implies that this will be a strong argument for Ukraine before the instability situation. The Polish president saw such cooperation not only had economic potential but also an opportunity to consolidate the eastern flank of NATO, where Poland followed the traditional role. Duda's speech reflects Warsaw's desire to hold the leadership position for the process of supporting Ukraine, especially in the context of the relationship between Kyiv and Washington. Duda's idea is not only limited to eloquence. Poland has long supported Europe's deeper participation in Ukraine, especially since the US policy under Mr. Trump began to switch to pragmatic and reduce commitments. According to Poland, agreement with Europe will become a Kyiv insurance when they are in a difficult situation after the defeat of the negotiation in Washington on February 28, 2025. Earlier, the European Union was researching to build an alternative to the US proposal on mining in Ukraine, emphasizing that the EU could access 21 of the 30 important materials necessary for its industry. Unlike the United States, which requires 50% of fossil fuel revenue without military guarantee, the EU is in a softer approach when discussing general investment and long-term cooperation. Latvian President Edgars Rinkevics supported the idea of Poland, claiming that Ukraine himself had to choose a partner, but Europe could show more favorable conditions, including security issues. Deadly gun battle near Damascus tense every hour. Israel issued a hot directive. The guns of the new government in Syria and the Druze community on March 1st killed 1 person and 9 injured people. Conflict in Syria. The new government in Syria has just strengthened its position after the regime of former President Bashar al-Assad collapsed, facing serious challenges. In the southern suburbs of Damascus, Jaramana, Druze, one of the country's minority religious groups, has openly rebelled against Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, the force currently controlling the country. Aviapro assessed that tensions in the area are increasing over hours. HTS soldiers are gathering forces near Jaramana, preparing to control the resistance forces. Meanwhile, Druze, who organized self-defense units called Jaramana Shield, are strengthening checkpoints at the entrance to the city. The clashes have begun and the situation is at risk of escalating into a comprehensive conflict. The sparks this clash on March 1st, at one of the checkpoints before entering Jaramana. Colonel Hassam al-Tahan, head of the local security force, said that the soldiers of the Syrian Defense Ministry were on their way to the city to visit relatives. However, at the checkpoint, they were blocked by the militia, forbidding them to carry weapons. According to Tahan, after handing over weapons, they were attacked and their cars were targeted directly by gun, leading to casualties. According to the Ministry of Home Affairs of the new government, the Druze acted aggressively with the army. However, the Druze claimed that the HTS were incited when insulting the local people. The battlefield quickly escalated into a gun battle, killing 1 person and 9 injured. Israeli reaction. Israel, where the lives of about 150 Druze, the third largest community after Syria and Lebanon, responded quickly to the threat to those of their religions. Immediately after the incident, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made a tough statement, promising to attack Syria if the Druze in Jarramana was in danger. Netanyahu ordered the Israeli Defense Force, IDF, to intervene, emphasizing that Israel would not allow escalating against the Druze. Last week, Israel also warned that the new Syrian government force should not enter the southern region of Damascus. Declaration on March 1 of Israeli Prime Minister showed that the water force could go deeper into Syria. France 24 TV channel reported that the Israeli forces recently established stations in the buffer zone, on the strategic Hermon mountain. There is currently no major clash between the Israeli army and the new Syrian force. Europe is like a hot cow ants after the battlefield at the White House. European officials describe the situation after 10 minutes of war between US President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymir Zelenskyy, disaster. The long-standing expectation between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and US President Donald Trump ended with a fierce debate. After the meeting, Mr. Donald Trump was surprised at saying President Zelenskyy should only return when he was ready for peace. According to his relatives, the opportunity to reach an agreement to end the Ukraine conflict is almost zero if Mr. Zelenskyy is still in power. Talking to the press while leaving the meeting on the evening of February 28, Donald Trump emphasized, "Or we will end it, or let him fight by himself. And if he fought himself, it would not be easy, because without us, he could not win." This statement caused European countries that have tried to convince Donald Trump to not rush to reach the agreement under the favorable conditions for Moscow, extremely shocked. Estonia Prime Minister Kaja Kallas frankly said, "It is time for Europe to stand up." Europe was pushed in a difficult position. Over the past months, European leaders have been under pressure from the US president in increasing military assistance to Ukraine. Now, they have to face another difficult choice: continuing to support Kiev or concession Mr. Donald Trump, which means that Zelenskyy may have to leave the chair. US Finance Minister Scott Bessent, who was present at the meeting at the Oval Office, spoke on Bloomberg television. "It is difficult to reach an economic agreement with a leader who does not want to have a peaceful agreement." A European official said that the only benefit from this situation was Moscow. Meanwhile, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who has a close relationship with Mr. Donald Trump, poured more oil into the fire when he declared on social networks, "The strong man is a harmonious, the weak of the war." Most European leaders still publicly support Ukraine. Conservative Party President Friedrich Merz stated, "We stand side by side with Ukraine in all circumstances." But the big question is, if Mr. Donald Trump continues to pressure Ukraine to accept an adverse agreement, how will Europe react? Mr. Zelenskyy holds a stance, but is it enough? The initial meeting was expected to help strengthen the relationship between Kiev and Washington, as well as help the two sides get closer to the goal of signing the economic agreement. But after Zelenskyy refused to the White House owner that Russian President Vladimir Putin was a trustworthy person, the US president immediately got angry. "The attitude must change," Mr. Donald Trump said loudly in the meeting. "Let me tell him, there is no card in his hands. And his actions are very disrespectful to the United States." Mr. Zelenskyy then tried to alleviate the situation by posting messages on social networks, expressing gratitude to the United States, but it seems that everything was too late. However, Mr. Zelenskyy did not regret. Answering Fox News, he asserted, "We want peace. But we cannot lose our value, dignity, and freedom." Talking to Bloomberg, Mr. Trump's anonymous advisor emphasized that the parties have poured too much effort into the peaceful negotiation process, so the agreement is difficult to be abandoned now. Instead, Washington can increase pressure on Kiev and avoid working directly with Mr. Zelenskyy. But the hope of a mineral agreement between the US and Ukraine may have been melted into nowhere after a public debate at the White House, according to Bloomberg. Historian Sergei Radchenko commented, "What we are seeing is that Mr. Donald Trump is ready to cut off with Ukraine. Russia blowed the battle on Trump-Zelensky, an expert guessing the upcoming damage to Kiev." According to Fox, USA, these heavy losses have occurred with Kiev in the context of the negotiation between President Trump and his peers Zelenskyy, broken publicly. Russia blames Kiev damaged the battle on the battle day. Fox News Agency, USA, on March 1 reported that Ukraine lost hundreds of soldiers on the battlefield on the same day Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, A fierce argument with President Donald Trump at the White House on February 28. This highlights the tension and risk of negotiations. The Russian Ministry of Defense statement said that on that day, the Ukrainian army lost more than 220 soldiers in Kursk province, located in the west of Russia and adjacent to the northeast of Ukraine. These soldiers were killed when 11 armored combat vehicles, 12 motor vehicles and 7 Ukrainian cannons were destroyed by the Russian army. 1 infantry battle vehicle, 1 armored vehicle carrying troops, 7 points of drone control and 1 ammunition of Ukraine forces were also erased by the Russian army. Earlier, in August 24, Kiev launched a cross-border attack on the Russian province, in order to force Moscow to disperse forces from the eastern front of Ukraine. However, so far, they have not been successful with their plans. According to Fox, these heavy losses occur with Kiev in the context of the negotiations between President Trump and his peers Zelenskyy, broken publicly, and Vice President J.D. Vance highlighted Ukrainian difficulties in recruiting troops. During the war, everyone had a problem, including him. He now has a beautiful ocean and does not feel that, but in the future he will feel it, Mr. Zelenskyy said in the talks at the Oval Room. Thank you for your interest. Do not forget to like, share and subscribe to not miss the latest news. Hello and see you again.